So any updates on Legends of Valor? Also, how many ventures you have going on with you? About 6 major ventures and a lot of small satellite ventures. Legends of Valor is on ice right now. I just don't have time for it. I wrote out many pages of concept notes and things I want to do. I have an ending in mind. I have the major characters planned out. I have a rough idea of what technology I want to put in. I even looked at various different magic systems to put in, campaign settings to embed within. It'd been cool to embed it in like Forgotten Realms or something, but I'd have to buy WotC and dewoke the damn company. So I'll have to create a new game world specifically to embed Middle Dwarf and Legends of Valor. And uh, the part of if you look at Baldur's Gate 3, the reason why they were so tremendously successful is they did 3 things really well. They first started from IP that was extremely well understood and has a humongous fan base and a lot of internal lore about it. And they did not insult or deviate from that. So you could do Star Wars, you can do Lord of the Rings, you can do Forgotten Realms. You don't want to go to war with the people who love that. So they said, what made Faerun special and Baldur's Gate special? And let's do a proper homage to it. So that alone, massively helps you because you're walking in with a pre-existing multi-million person fan base and you haven't insulted them and pissed all over them like Rings of Power did or modern Marvel movies are doing or what they did with the new trilogy in Star Wars or these types of things. It's not patently insulting to the things. Like you don't have Elminster decide that, he's just got to, you know, enter into a gay relationship with Bane and, take up, cooking and be a weenie or something. It's like, what are we doing? This is nuts. Oh, Disney would do that. We have to reimagine Elminster. So they said, we're going to stay true to the source material. And while we do that, we're also going to deviate enough to give some goodies for everybody. So they were quite inclusive inside the game. They let you be a non-binary player. You can do, it's very friendly in many different respects, but that wasn't the core point of it. But they found a way to pay homage to the core content. Second, they innovated on gameplay mechanics. So they did a beautiful translation of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and they were able to perfectly adjust that in a way that they created a very competitive, nice, compelling game that has extraordinarily high replayability and optimization, which is essential for high hour count. And the third thing is they're actually good writers. They wrote a good story, a compelling story, characters you care about, characters that have stakes, characters that are interesting, characters that people fall in love with and do fan art with and fan fiction about, for better or for worse. So you need to do those 3 things if you're going to have a mega blockbuster success. You have to have the right game world and expectation management of it and deviate just enough so that you can do something new, but you're paying an homage to what people know. You have to have great gameplay mechanics, and then you actually have to have a good story and good characters. Now, Top Gun Maverick is a great example of that. The Top Gun ethos, there was an expectation about how those characters should behave and who those characters should be, and they honored that. Then they added some new stuff that we didn't expect to see that was pretty exciting and interesting. So that meaty mechanics thing, and it actually had a pretty good story, all things considered. So it worked well on all 3 sides. You get a $1 billion franchise. Great. Avatar 2 is another example of that. Decent story. You have all this new candy that no one's ever seen before that's super exciting and fun, but then it met our expectations of Pandora. The problem with Legends of Valor is there's no IP behind it that is compelling or interesting for people. And anybody remembers, there's like Todd Howard, there's a few guys, and he created Elder Scrolls based on that. Great. So the really deep insider guys like Don Daglow or the Bethesda guys or any of the early 90s Interplay people, they'll remember Legends of Valor and with some degree of fondness, but it was never something that created a world and took off. So the first huge challenge is, do you borrow a world like Pathfinder or Faerun or whatever and embed within that world, which case you have to do what Larian did, which is retrofit, or do you build a completely new world from scratch? And that's what BioWare did with Dragon Age Origins, and they constructed an entirely new world from scratch. That's hard. It's very hard to construct a world. from scratch, and there's a lot of work you have to put into world building to do that correctly. Gameplay mechanics are really interesting because you look at the CRPG genre, you're either going to end up as a turn-based CRPG like Baldur's Gate or some variant of it, Pillars of Eternity, these types of things, or you'll do like an RTS, a real-time feedback system like Skyrim has or these other games have. And there's pros and cons to both sides of this. And you can kind of hybridize it, but you tend to always be in one bucket or the other bucket. And it tends to attract different types of players. The turn-based system doesn't tend to work as well with console players. Baldur's Gate actually was the first breakthrough exception to that. Generally, you're more God of War than you are Baldur's Gate, but it seems to work reasonably well on PS5 and Xbox. So I've given a lot of thought on both sides of that spectrum of how does that entire set of gameplay mechanics work, and how do you put those pieces together. And then on the story side, you have to have a great story, and you have to have really interesting and compelling characters, and dig into that. And that's just a matter of hiring good writers, working with good writers, having a good philosophical arc, really digging into good concepts to explore. The concept of divinity is a big thing with Larian Studios, and if you look at their entire game lines, they're always doing stuff with gods and mortals. That's kind of their thing. It goes all the way back to the Odyssey and the Iliad. So it's a theme that was quite popular in Greek history and Roman history. Fell out of favor for a bit, and they brought it back. So that's their favorite thing in the whole world. I have a slightly different approach, but you have to have that core. It takes time too, and a lot of iteration. You have to think about it. And the thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is they gave themselves a lot of favors by having a pre-existing notion of how to build these games, how to do the storytelling, and they inherited all the stuff from Wizards of the Coast and Forgotten Realms. That's a huge advantage. To build that all from scratch, you're going to have 1 to 2 years of fucking around. And then you actually get to start at the same place that they started, and it took them 6 years to build Baldur's Gate 3. Early release was also a really good model. It helps you build a great relationship with your community if you use it correctly. And then also they just mastered the social media side of the equation. So that was also a very nice component of it. So I've given it a great degree of thought. And when there's more time, it'll become something that I probably spend half a decade on. And definition of success for me is, I'd like it to be one of the most popular games of all time. A legendary game. And also, if you're successful, it launches a completely new world. It's a money printing machine. Why? Because you have a world. And so you have tons of characters in that world, and you have tons of sequels you can do. You can do an MMO, just like Bethesda does with Cyrodiil, the world of the Elder Scrolls. And it just works really beautifully for them. So you got to knock it out of the park. And that's why I'm taking my time with it.